Laura, welcome to the podcast. Can you tell the listeners a little bit about what you do first and foremost?
Thanks for having me. So, first and foremost, I am a relationship coach and I help women to break old relationship patterns, unhealthy, toxic relationship patterns, and get into alignment with themselves and secure healthy attachments and partners.
How long have you been doing that for?
So, on and off for about a decade, which makes me
Okay.
sound a little bit ancient, but yeah, so I've done it coaching for, over a decade. And then I kind of niched into what I do now, which is my Align and Attract coaching program, where I work with women on their patterns and get them into secure relationships for the last 5 or 6 years.
And what drew you into that?
Well, I've always been fascinated with the human mind, right,
Yeah.
and potential. And I was always, one for wandering down the self-help aisle at the local bookstore. And I always also wondered, like, what's the difference between people that can find, their childhood sweetheart and live happily ever after versus people that are just like chronically single and just can't seem to ever have a relationship that lasts. And so as I, started dating myself and coming across that kind of thing, I just got more and more interested in that and noticing different patterns at play in different people's lives and relationships. So that kind of drew
Do
me.
you notice that? Have you noticed maybe over the last couple of years, has it seemed like people are finding it harder and harder to get into relationships?
Yes and no. I mean, if we look at like what's going off on social media, there's a lot of people that are just kind of like swearing off love
Yeah.
altogether, right? Because it's just like, and it's understandable because there's only so many times you can repeat a pattern and have the same outcome that
Mm.
take, a toll on you, before you're just like, nah, I'm out. It's like we've
Mm.
literally got inbuilt defenses that are going to protect us from keep doing that, right? So, I definitely think, yeah, maybe it's something that's a bit more of a cultural thing at the minute.
Yeah, I think I noticed on social media. Obviously, social media isn't the truth of everything because it's like the loudest voices are always in the room, so that's what you'll hear, even though it could be like the minority. But I see on like social media a lot of real like men versus women, like them versus us kind of things. The manosphere and the feminists and like how terrible men are or how terrible women are. And that's kind of my observation of that.
Yeah, I've noticed that too. And again, you have to think like how much of this is real versus how
Yeah,
much of it is like kind of stuff that's pushed out just for rage bait, right? Or for just
yeah.
engagement, but it's not the reality. And I think it's like a bit of a mix.
Yeah. So what type of clients would you work with over the last couple of years? Like what are the kind of problems they have when they come to work with you?
Yeah, so full range. Often it might be people that are getting out of a toxic situation or a marriage or something where, it's kind of reached that level of toxicity.
Yeah.
So they might come out of that feeling quite disconnected from themselves. That can be, if you're in a situation where your boundaries are getting violated or your self-trust's getting eroded for different reasons, like you come out of it feeling like a bit of an empty shell. So
Mhm.
sometimes people come, when they're in that situation. Other times it's just people that are just sick of, repeating the same patterns in relationships and they're like, hang on a minute, I'm the common denominator, what's going on? You know, subconsciously in me that's like drawing me to these people or, where I don't find the other secure, healthy options attractive.
Yeah. And what type of, because I presume then like the people that work with you when you're coaching them, it's not all okay, the fundamental like the pivot of success here is that you get into a healthy relationship. I'm sure there's loads of different types of success within working with them clients. So like what would you deem as a successful journey for some of the clients that come on board with you?
Yeah, totally. Like I know in the fitness industry, it's talked about like the non-scale
Yeah,
victories,
yeah.
right? So the non-relationship victories would be, when you catch yourself responding differently. So like, and I've literally had that this morning. A client messaged me, she's like, "Oh, I'm so excited. Like I was going somewhere yesterday. I received this message that would have previously kind of played on my mind." And she was like, I
Mm.
just went, "No, I'm not dealing with that right now. I'm out doing this." So it's those little moments or choosing differently, cutting something off quicker. If you're like, yeah, there's chemistry, but we're not compatible or we don't want the same things in the long run. So I'm gonna, stop this before it gets too far. just coming back into alignment, like literally date how you feel day to day. So feeling more confident, building that self-trust, making different choices, focusing on different things. Those are
Yeah,
all.
because I would imagine, yeah, like unless you have them, non-relationship wins, like you're not gonna get to that stage anyway. Because it's like, oh, I'm just gonna keep going back to that pattern of spending time with that person just because they gave me attention, even though I know that they're not right for me.
Totally. And I know a lot of clients that I work with do want relationships. That is their intention and their
Yeah,
goal. But for me, as like a coach, it's never about that. It's like that's the added bonus, right? The cherry on top of the cake. The real payoff is your relationship to self, right? And knowing yourself, knowing, oh, that's, a pattern, or that's a limiting belief that I used to have that would push me down this road, or I would, minimize certain, needs or not express myself in case it upset the
mm,
connection. And, so it's kind of like working through all of that and coming to that place where you feel secure and you're
yeah.
like, okay, I like this person. I want it to work out. If it doesn't, I'm still going to be okay.
Yes, that makes perfect sense because it's like the relationship becomes a byproduct of you working on your own relationship, which is quite similar to coaching weight loss. It's like, okay, yes, I know what you want is weight loss, but we actually need to sort all these other problems out, like improve your relationship with food, focus on health seeking behaviors, focus on doing things because you enjoy doing them things, and then weight loss ends up becoming a byproduct. So it's like by not focusing on the thing, you end up getting the thing that you want sometimes.
Yeah, it's like that inside out approach, right? Whether
Yeah.
it's fitness and relationships have always been a great mirror. Because again, like you could, think you've done the healing in private when you're not connected to anyone, and then you go out dating, and all of a sudden you're getting triggered, or you realize like, oh, actually, I've not worked on this, or this person's bringing this thing out to the
Yeah,
surface to
that makes
work
sense.
through.
Can we talk about relationship attachments? Because just for people that aren't sure of the terminology and what they mean, so how would you like define a secure relationship or a secure person even?
So secure relationships or secure, tendencies are it's like I'm okay and I'm okay in relationship and I'm okay when that relationship is either not there or that person's busy or I'm single, right? So it's
Mm,
like it doesn't affect your self-worth. Like yes, connection is, a human need. We all need connection and want relationships. But it's like that healthy reciprocal thing. And it's like there's not that drive to control or to spiral out if that person's not showing up in the way that you want or need them to. The secure communication. So you're not shrinking or minimizing your own needs. You're
mm,
like, look, this is who I am, this is what I value, this is what I need, in a relationship or want from a relationship. And if that other person is like, oh, I can't do that, if you're secure, you're like, okay, we'll go our separate ways then, right? No hard
mm.
feelings. Whereas what I see a lot, I mean, I used to do this as well myself, with anxious attachment is you either don't say that in the first place what you need,
Yeah,
and we wear these masks of like whether it's like the chill girl mask or like I've not got any needs, right? And I'll just go with the flow, even though I really want a relationship.
yeah,
But like like that kind of thing. Or that you might put a boundary in place or ask or request something, and if that other person's like, yeah, I'm not going to do that, or they don't follow through,
mm,
rather than going, okay, look, let's readdress this, or, we've not done this, is there a reason why? And having that communication, often it'll be internalized and it'll be like, well, I'm not good enough, or this is all I can get. So, this is the best person I've ever found. So I'm going to kind of pedestal them and prioritize them and
mm.
that attachment over my own needs. So to answer your question, like with anxious attachment, often it's like I'm going to prioritize the connection over my own authentic self and, my own secure attachment. Secure attachment is like, no, like we're both priority, both our needs matter. And if this is a fit, we'll go forward. If not, then that's fine.
Yeah,
And then the avoidant side of things. So there's dismissive avoidant and fearful avoidant. Dismissive avoidant is a bit more like I'm prioritizing me over the connection, right? So that's when we have the people that are pulled back or like find a bit dismissive. And
yeah.
the fearful is a bit push pull, right? They're like bit one leg in each camp. So that can be confusing.
Oh, tell me a little bit more about the fearful avoid because that sounds a little bit like me.
So it's like the best of both worlds. So
Mm,
basically, so basically, like you want intimacy, and because that's essentially what it is. We're talking about like
yeah,
intimacy, right? So for the dismissive avoidant, like if someone gets too close, like they're like, oh no, get away.
yeah,
And that kind of comes out with the fearful too. So sometimes, in terms of fearful attachment and what that can look like is you want the attachment, you want the connection and intimacy, but you're also scared of it.
mhm,
that you're scared of, like, you're either scared it's going to go away, so
Mm.
you end up pushing it away before they can leave, or um, with the dismissive, it's more like, I'm scared you're going to engulf me and I'm going to lose myself, so therefore you need to get distanced.
Yes. So
Um,
would a fearful avoidant be very hyper independent or very kind of like would you categorize them as people who are very much like workaholics and stuff like that, or is that a generalization?
So, I mean, it's all generalization, isn't it?
Yeah.
If we're
Yeah.
kind of like talking about it like this, but
Yeah.
I would say that more leans to the dismissive. Like
Okay.
with dismissive avoidant, we might see more workaholic tendencies because
Mm.
again, it's like, you're prioritizing work over intimacy for whatever reason that might be. But yeah, the fearful one is more like the push-pull. So it's
Mm.
like you would probably not be as workaholic with that one. You still might have some tendencies, and when you're pushing away, you might throw yourself into something else.
Mm.
But then you kind of come back, right? You push away and then you regret it, and then you're trying to reconnect.
What would a could an someone who has an anxious attachment and someone who has an avoidant attachment could it ever work between the two people, or it could?
Yeah, I mean, they're not like, a life sentence. You
Yeah.
can do the work and you can, adapt and change. So again, like we're all coming back to secure attachment. And so if you've ever taken like an online quiz, right, where it's like, what's your attachment style? It'll show you in like a pie chart. So there'll be, you're this percentage of secure, this percentage of anxious, avoidant. And so we're just working on identifying like, okay, what are my, anxious triggers or avoidant triggers and patterns?
Yeah.
And then, how can I work through those so I come to a place of responding versus reacting? And then it's just that different choice point over time. And so when you say like, can they work? They can work, but there's the caveat of both people have to be willing
Mm.
to put in the work, right? If one partner's like, I want to work through this and I see your patterns and I see mine, but the other person's like, no, there's nothing wrong with me, like, or no, I'm just a workaholic.
Yeah, there
They're
has to
not,
be some level of self awareness there to be like, oh, I do have this avoidant attachment or I do have this anxious attachment.
yeah. So the self-awareness plus the willingness, because there's plenty of self-aware
Oh,
people that are
right,
not
yeah,
willing, right, to
yeah,
put in the
yeah.
work. And they're just like, I'll just keep avoiding that and I'll just replace with the next person, which, like we were talking about with the dating. There's
Mm,
like this endless supply on dating apps, right? This
yeah,
revolving door. It's just like, oh, you're upsetting me, right? Because this is often where, say, you've been dating like anxious and avoidant,
yeah.
and it's going along in that first little honeymoon period, and you're like, oh my God, I found someone amazing. Like we both want the same things, the communication's there, the intimacy's there. But then there's like what I call like the avoidant tripwire. So it's okay to a point, because in the beginning it's not true intimacy, right? It's like desire.
Yeah.
And it's like you're getting to know a person. It's not the in the trenches, commitment and
No,
relationships.
it's
Once
fun.
that comes along,
Yeah.
then it's like, oh, I don't like that phase. Like that makes
Mm,
me uncomfortable because now I've got to look at like what's my part in this. Why, like I've got to have this conversation, or this person's got a need, and that makes me feel uncomfortable because now I feel like they're, wanting something from me. So it
mm.
brings all of our stuff to the surface.
And where does this come from? Where does this like anxious attachment come from, and where does this avoidant attachment come from?
So again, it's like nervous system, right? So
Mm,
part of the healing and the regulation is from soothing the nervous system. So with anxious attachers, typically, we'll have a hard time self-regulating. So on my page, obviously, I poke fun a lot at the avoidance because that's what I do. But like
Oh,
also,
and also another question. Sorry, just on that. Sorry for interrupting you, but and also because you work with a lot of women as well, do you notice that women are more have a more tendency to be have anxious attachment versus men have avoidant attachment, or is that a
I
that's
mean,
again a
only
generalization?
because it's my little part of the world, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, yeah,
I know there's examples of avoidant women and anxious men. I know I've come across them,
yeah,
but from what I deal with on a day-to-day basis,
yeah.
from my, little POV, it's
Yeah,
more obviously the women, but that's not, necessarily accurate and true on the
yeah,
whole. Um, but yeah, so we poke fun at the avoidance, but then every now and again there'll be someone in the comments that's just like, yeah, well, anxious people are unbearable. And it's true, right? Like I've been on the receiving end of, dating someone who's got anxious attachment as well.
yeah.
And it can be quite overbearing because with anxious attachment, and again, I used to have this issue myself, is you can find it hard to self-regulate. So it's like when you notice the other person pulling back,
Mm,
it triggers this this response. It's like, that's because from a nervous system point of view, and again, this is often not coming from our rational adult mind. It's coming from like a younger part of us that was like, this attachment is my world, right? So whether it started off with your caregivers or parents, when you're like 4, you can't survive without them, right? So it is like life or death. Obviously, when we're adults, it's not the same, but the nervous system didn't get the memo. So
Yeah.
it triggers this like, I need to get this person back. So then we kind of like go into overdrive mode, which for an avoidant, it's going to repel them further because they're like,
Mm.
ooh, get away. I was already getting like a bit icked out by the intimacy growing, and now you're like, you can't self-regulate, which,
You feel they're too needy.
right. So yeah. And I mean they are because they need you to
Yeah.
make them feel better, right? To
Yeah.
make them feel calm in that
Yeah,
moment.
but which is okay, but for the avoidant person, it's like the worst thing in the world.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally, which is understandable,
yeah,
right? And for the anxious person, the worst thing in the world is the person you had intimacy with, the person you thought you were, developing a connection with, all of a sudden just
gone.
discarding you like you nothing, right? Like you never even had a thing going in the
Yeah.
first place. So, and then you're both activated, and then it's just a shit fight. So the solution is self-regulation, right? And when we're talking about can anxious and avoidant work together, the answer is yes. If the avoidant can step away and communicate, hey, I this is too much for me right now. I need some time away. I am coming back, right? And I'll come back, on Tuesday at 4 o'clock and we'll talk about it then. But what normally happens is they just go away and they're like, oh yeah, we'll reconnect, and then it's just left open-ended. For the anxious, that's just unbearable, right?
Mm.
And they're over there struggling to self-regulate because in their mind it's like, like part of your brain literally goes offline when you're stressed out, right? And it's like this fight or flight stress response. And so they'll be ruminating, talking about it with like their friend over and over, trying to reach out, even though that person's asked for space. And it's just, very stressful for all involved.
And can you be? Is it possible that you might be like have more of an anxious attachment to one person, but more of an avoidance attachment to another person?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, we're all there's something in psychology and nervous system regulation called neuroception,
Okay.
which is basically like we're always reading each other. So we communicate verbally and with body language, we know that. But then there's that like hidden language of like our nervous systems corresponding, and it's always kind of on the lookout of like, am I safe? Is this safe? Is this person safe? So for some people, if they've got unresolved, say for example, I meet someone who's super secure, but I've got, some lingering anxious stuff, their security might feel icky to me because it's like there's nowhere to hide. With an avoidant, they're not really showing up and seeing you. So it's like they're the problem, right? I'm
Yeah.
fine with my unresolved issues. They won't commit. They're the problem. They're distant. When as if someone's, they're showing up, they're not going anywhere, and they're like, hey, are you okay? That might then trigger that avoidance, right? Because it's like anxious and avoidant, they're kind of two sides of the same coin. So depending on who you're with and what they're leading with will correspond to like what's coming out in you.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. Like, what? Oh, this person. Why is this person? Why is he all these healthy behaviors? It's making me feel uncomfortable because I'm just used to like
Yeah.
toxicity and like chaos, basically.
Totally. And like so say you're dating a hardcore dismissive avoidant. They're not really that bothered about your needs or, what's going on in your inner world.
Yeah.
Whereas like someone who's secure, they want to know what's going on in your inner world. But if you're disconnected from that because you're used to minimizing your needs or putting on a different mask, that's going to be uncomfortable because you're like, actually, I don't even know what my needs are, or like, how do I actually feel about this? And now someone's wanting answers and I don't have them, right? It's gonna trigger
I
that.
suppose, and like, so this all goes back to what you literally just said at the start. It's like the wins might not be getting into a relationship yet. It's being able to heal yourself essentially.
Yeah, and like the biggest factor is that the self-regulation,
Yeah,
because we know what carnage that
yeah,
causes.
yeah,
And it's not like a sexy thing to do. It's not like, you see certain offers and stuff online and it's like, oh, come and get this result in 6 weeks. Like, for
yeah,
example, lose 3 stone in
yeah,
6 weeks. And you're like,
yeah,
sign me up.
yeah.
That's what I need. But this is a bit slower and it's like, it's not as sexy. It's not as like, yeah,
Yeah,
let me buy.
it's not tangible. It's not like oh yeah, you can make 200 quid in 2 weeks kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, and again, like we're humans. We don't want to look at some of that stuff. It's uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
And for some people it's so uncomfortable because they've never gone there, right? And sometimes there's trauma and stuff mixed in with all of
Yeah.
that. Like these patterns don't come out of nowhere. They come out of trauma. They're adaptations, survival adaptations. So whether it's anxious or avoidant, they're rooted in something that felt uncomfortable.
And do you have to have that conversation with clients when they come into you that like it's that expectation that like these things that you're struggling with won't be resolved overnight probably?
A little bit, yeah. And it's almost like, you know, if you start like cleaning a room or tidying out your wardrobe and you're like, yes, I'm gonna do this. And then you get like halfway through and shit's everywhere and you're just like, I don't want to continue.
I'll come back to this.
Yeah, like, oh, I don't really want to do this anymore. I'm tired. But
Yeah.
like everything's everywhere. And you know you're gonna feel better once it's all tidied and, squared away, but you've just got to push through that little bit.
Is there any like micro habits that can help? Let's say someone has a anxious attachment and you're helping them to become more secure in themselves. Like what are some like exercises or like patterns that they have to try to overcome or like things that help them become more secure?
Yes. So we're always going to start with boundaries.
Yeah.
Because so secure is safety, right? So we want to create internal safety and also like boundaries with, you might have noticed this before in relationships and I suppose like with clients and stuff, right? If we know where we stand, that creates an environment of safety. Whereas if you start working with a client, but you're like, yeah, we're a bit sloppy with like when and how we're going to communicate or like what access you get, and we don't really know what you get in or when, it's like, oh, I don't feel really safe in this container, right? It's uncertainty. So having boundaries is essentially like boundaries with self. So for example, if you're like, I want marriage and kids, therefore one of my boundaries is I'm not going to entertain someone who's going with the flow and doesn't know what they want or
Yeah.
won't commit. And then boundaries with other people would be, right, I'm going to ask for my needs to be met. If someone's kind of being a bit disrespectful or not treating me with consideration, I'm not going to tolerate that, right? Because that doesn't feel good and that's not what I want. So I have to then put a boundary in place. And then if that person oversteps that or doesn't respect that boundary, there has to be a consequence, right? It's not just like I'm going to set a boundary but not enforce it, because otherwise, what's the point? Coming back to the self again. So just half of the work is like noticing. So like noticing, oh, that felt uncomfortable, or this is coming up. And rather than just kind of like pushing it down and going for a scroll on TikTok or whatever, we start to kind of lean in and tune into what's going on so that
Mm.
that unresolved stuff, because it's our little bodies like, warning lights, right? It's like the little, hey, check here, look at this is what's coming up. And from there we can kind of go a bit deeper and go, right, so what needs adjusting to bring into alignment with that secure self.
That makes sense. And what about the opposite way? If you were working with someone who has like avoidant attachment, what kind of like micro steps would help them to become more secure?
Okay, so for avoidance, again, is tuning in again. So like notice what feels uncomfortable and why, and get curious. Because again, like curiosity is a key word to, rather than just kind of like dismiss it or push it down or blame someone else, it's like, right, you know, taking responsibility, right? For like, these are my patterns, this is what's coming up for me. And then how do I want to communicate? If I'm, dating someone who's got anxious attachment style and I find that a bit overbearing,
Mm.
I can then communicate like, hey, this is what I need, and kind of work with the other person, right? And go, right, if we have a disagreement for future reference, before we're both like, in the midst of it, let's put some rules in place, right? Let's put some little boundaries in place of this is how it's going to go down. I'm going to go over here and we'll reconnect after X amount of time.
Yeah. Talking. So obviously, then a lot of the clients you work with are single and are trying today, and maybe not be um in a position today yet, and some maybe are. What are some of the main issues you see in modern dating right now?
Well, where do we start? Um, People not being transparent, I think,
Yeah.
is a big, big problem. Because, I've worked with women all over the world for like over 5 years in this particular niche, and
Yeah.
it's like, okay, so we've gone past picking wrong, right? We've gone past like, oh, I'm drawn to avoidance, or I'm drawn to emotionally unavailable people that can't meet my needs. To people come in and like there's this like performative secure. So people can pick up a book on attachment or watch a podcast on attachment and
Mm.
know the lingo and know, oh yeah, I know that. I'm secure. I've healed my issues. But then when it comes to the test, they're still playing out the pattern, right? Because the willingness is not there. the willingness to kind of deal with that discomfort and work through it and level up is not there. So I think one of the biggest things that I'm seeing, again, like when I'm working with people and also just from observing what's going off online, is this thing of like people performing and not really truly being themselves, or, a bit manipulative, right? It's like if you're presenting a certain way to get an end, right? But then you're not going to follow through with that. It's
Mm,
a bit
that's
toxic.
what you came back to saying. Self awareness plus what was the other thing you said?
Willingness.
Plus willingness. Yeah, yeah, that makes perfect sense. And I suppose with the rise of social media, everyone knows therapy terminology now and using it probably out of context a lot of the times as well.
Say that again.
But now because that everyone knows like therapy
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
terminology that
Right,
and
yeah,
then
yeah.
they're using it out of context or like yeah, not really saying things but not really understanding them really.
Because that's the key thing, right? It's like, oh, I've met someone, they're self-aware. They know
Yeah,
that they used to have this. They know about this. But then it's like different, right? Like, I know how to lose weight. I know what I should eat and not eat, but
yeah,
are you doing it daily,
yeah.
consistently?
And then if you're not doing it, you don't really know what you're doing, even though you kind of you say you do, but like you don't know it in depth. You don't
Well,
really.
something's out of alignment,
Yeah,
right? Because it's
exactly.
like, it's okay if I say it and I know it, but I'm comfortable at the weight I'm at. I don't want to lose weight. So
Yeah,
that's one thing,
yeah,
right? I'm comfortable. I want to stay single
yeah,
or, whatever. But it's like if you want a relationship, you're saying you want a relationship, you're putting in the effort, you're going on dates, you're talking to people, but then there's the, broken link,
yeah,
right? It's
yeah,
not
yeah. Um, how can a single person tell if they're genuinely ready to start dating again or they're just lonely?
well, it's a good question. I mean, and this is the thing, right? You don't need to be fully healed to
Mm,
date, right? Like it's not because, like I said, sometimes stuff comes out in the process of dating that otherwise you wouldn't have uncovered. So, I mean, if you're jumping from one relationship, you're devastated, and next week you're on 5 dates lined up because you're desperate to find someone, that's a bit of a red flag,
yeah,
right? Like you need to be able to sit with and process, the end of something before you get into something else to make sure there's not that, you 2 months in with someone and then you're like, actually, I'm not over my ex. It's like being considerate and emotionally hygienic, right? To have those boundaries in place. So they're kind of the flags. It's like check your own intention. Am I doing this because I'm super uncomfortable and I just need a distraction or I need validation? In which case, maybe pause.
yeah.
Or it's like, am I, quite happy and content? I'm working on myself and I want a relationship.
And what it, yeah, so I suppose that's kind of also the same as like if you're jumping from one relationship to the other and they keep ending, then you probably haven't worked on the thing that's probably causing them relationships to end as well.
A bit of self-reflection, yeah. Because again, like maybe you were in something and it ended because they didn't want to go any further, and
Mm,
you're like, no, I know I'm good, right?
yeah,
But it's just looking at your own patterns, and again being honest with yourself, right?
yeah.
And being like, where is this actually coming from?
And does it happen the opposite way as well, where it's like people they break up with someone and then they find it really, really hard to go back dating again and like well kind of over time where they're just constantly ruminating about it.
Yeah, that can happen quite a lot as well, I think.
How, how do you help someone who's in that situation?
So there's a couple of different things, right? So it's not like if a relationship ends. Sometimes it's like it's ended for a reason, right? And it's
Hmm.
incompatible, move on. Sometimes you're like, oh, it ended because my anxious attachment style was out of control, right? And I
Yeah.
knew I was needy and I pushed that person away, whatever.
Mm.
And it's like, okay, so am I going to do that work to up level? And then through doing that work and from like up leveling and becoming more secure, reconnecting with that person on a different level, right? Because if it's broken up for a reason, so you don't want to reconnect on that same level. You want to up level, which can happen. And then if you're, if that person's moved on and you're just that ruminating, again, it's looking at what's going on deeper for
Mm.
that. Because often it's like the fantasy, right? Or we're not seeing the picture clearly because our mind's stuck on the idea or the projection or the fantasy of what that was or what that could have been, which, it's difficult to go there and to face that because it's uncomfortable feelings that are going
Yeah.
to come up.
Yeah. What are some green flags that you would say to maybe clients who are on like their first few dates with someone new?
Green flags to look out for.
Yeah.
So I would always highlight pacing. right? Because it's easy to get carried away when we want to jump in, the connection's there, and you think you know someone before you do. So pacing, if the other person is happy to pace, right? If they're not like, oh, come back to mine at the end of the second date, or oh, second date, I thought we could do Netflix and chill. They're like red flags. So you're like, is this person being considerate? Are they respecting my boundaries? Are they taking it slow? Are they being intentional? Are they communicating? And again, just keeping in the back of your mind what we know about people that can perform those things for the first 2 or 3 months. So it's just like, just making sure words and actions align consistently over time.
So people can be very much like you're on your first couple of dates and you think this person is great because they're giving you all this attention and they're constantly messaging you and they're being very thoughtful, and then 3 months in, then they do a 180 basically.
Yeah, dismiss you for someone else.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've got to be mindful of that.
Well,
But again,
that's really difficult to like. I would imagine for someone to be wary of, because it's like you're getting different signals all the time. Then.
yeah, and I think that's why it's easier to go, what are my own internal green flags, right? Versus because you don't we don't know each other, right? If you're meeting someone like you, unless you've known them for years or they're a mutual friend, and even then sometimes it's not, 100%.
Yeah.
But we can have this tendency to project onto someone and be like, oh yeah, I've been wanting this and this person's come along, they tick these boxes, so I'm going to assign this character to them,
Yeah.
right? Until they prove otherwise. Instead, we kind of need to go, how do I feel with this person? Do I feel safe? Does my nervous system feel regulated, or does it feel a little bit spirally?
Yeah.
Like when we're not together, am I constantly checking, waiting for a text message, or, feeling like there's hot and cold, or does it feel consistent? And
Mm.
again, not going like it's been 2 weeks of consistency, therefore this person's secure and amazing. It's like, right, that's good. Let's see how that continues, right?
And say someone's in that situation where like they're stuck spiraling over someone who's not showing interest. Like, how do you help someone like that, or what should they do?
Yeah. So, what should they do? Some self-inquiry, right? So coming back to disconnect a second from the outcome that you're trying to get and
Yeah.
go, right, so let me just first of all come out of denial a little bit and acknowledge what's actually happening, right? If this person's literally left me for dead,
Yeah.
should like if and I've got self-esteem and self-respect and protecting myself, should I really be still anchoring after them, right?
Yeah.
Or should I kind of start to accept like, okay, this person's shown me that this is where they're at and they've put their boundary in, they don't want to talk to me. So now let me go and figure out like, okay, what's my part in this and what do I want instead, and start working through some of that
Yeah.
self-regulation.
Yeah. Do you have any tips for people who are starting to date after, let's say, a divorce or a very long relationship? Like, is there any difference in the time in there versus maybe someone, who broke up with someone after a year or something like that?
Yes and no. Like what's quite interesting that I found doing this work is sometimes people get out of a marriage and then they'll meet someone and have like a little situationship, and then they'll be more devastated about the end of the situationship than they were about
Mm.
the end of the marriage. So it's like
Why
all
do you
relative.
think? Why do you think that is?
Could be a numerous things, right? So typically as well, if there's been a long ending, so typically with a marriage, it's a long ending, right? It's like
Yeah.
things weren't working out for a couple of years, we tried, and by the time it ends, you've
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah. They had almost broken up 4 years before they actually broke up.
right. So you've kind of done the grieving, you've come to terms, and you're just grateful for the freedom at the end of it, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, or you've not had your needs met for years and years, and you finally do something about it and get out.
Mm.
Not every case, some divorces come out of the blue, right, and can be really devastating. So, but then with the short-term stuff, it's like sometimes all of a sudden, like you're getting this new experience that you've not had, especially if you've been in something for a long time. And then again, we have this thing of like we can project onto stuff and have that fantasy, and it seems to make the higher you go, the bigger the fall kind of thing.
Mm.
So I think there's a few different factors that play into that.
Yeah, that's interesting. What's one weekly habit that meaningfully improves dating for people who are struggling in the dating market at the moment?
Good question. And I would say don't put too much emphasis on it, right? So especially for say, for example, using the apps,
Yeah.
don't be on there every day swiping until you lose the will to live, right? It's like just take a bit more of a measured approach. And I had a client and she was like, I'm just gonna go on 2 days a week, like treat it like a job and line up dates. And she ended up meeting someone in the wild anyway. So it's like the not like the less you care, but the less the less attached you are to that certain outcome coming from a certain place, right? So
Yeah.
it's like you just concentrate on how can I create a fulfilling life and how can I feel good and in alignment with my own self and my own life day to day.
Yeah.
Meeting the right person at the right time, is going to be a byproduct of that versus like trying to find the needle in a haystack.
Would you say most of your clients are getting dates through the dating apps, or is there a mix? Like, and what's your opinion on the dating apps and how to kind of you know improve the circumstances of that?
It's a funny one because part of me is like, oh, they're trash,
Yeah,
like the bottom of
yeah,
the barrel, don't bother. But ironically, a lot of my clients do meet partners through there. And the clients that meet partners, like really great partners on there, have also had that previous experience of, disaster after disaster on there or just not finding anything. So it's not like anything changed. I literally think it is about the alignment, right? Like how you show up and then what literally you're aligning with and matching with on any given day. And being
yeah.
able to recognize, right? Like in the past, they might have swiped past someone who ended up being a really great match for them because
Yeah, it
they're
makes sense.
correlating.
It makes sense because like people are often like demonizing the tool, and the tool is the social media app, but or the dating app. But essentially it could actually just be it could be you,
I mean,
unfortunately.
yeah, don't get me wrong, there's definitely, undesirable people on there with
Yeah,
different agendas. But again, if you get more laser focused on what you want, you're
yeah,
non-negotiable, you're swiping left on 98% anyway.
yeah, yeah. Is meeting someone in person almost dead now?
Well, like I said, I have got a few clients that have met people in the wild.
Yeah,
So, and again, I just think it comes down to that belief. Like I've got a client and since we started working together, I just pretty much meet someone out in about every week. So
yeah.
again, I think it comes down to if you never leave the house, you probably have a harder time. But if
Mm.
you've got that belief that like I'm a good person, people are drawn to me, you're naturally going to start to gravitate to those people.
And if someone, let's say, is it has gone through a breakup and they're trying to kind of meet someone again, and they're using the dating apps, but they're also out and about and probably trying different like things where they can meet people, like classes or whatever it is. I suppose even if they don't meet someone, they're also probably healing themselves in some way as well because they're focusing on things for themselves.
Yeah, and it's not just, romantic relationships, right? It's
Yeah,
like, we hear a lot at the minute about the loneliness epidemic or
yeah,
whatever. Like, it's like, well, connect, right? And if we're all just on behind screens all day, every day, we're not connecting anyway.
yeah.
And sometimes, you might, I've had, people that have gone to, like the in-person dating events are coming back. And so they've gone there and they've not met a romantic partner, but they've met, a great friend.
Mm.
So
Yeah, and it's enough for them. Going into then couples issues rather than people who are trying to navigate a single life. Do you work with anyone at the moment who you know going through issues as a couple? And also a question that I wanted to ask you as well, like what's the difference between like normal conflict in a relationship versus like obviously destructive conflict where it's likely to end in a breakup.
good question. So yeah, I mean, I do have clients that, worked with me because they wanted to find someone and then they find someone and then carry on working with me
Work,
just because
yeah, yeah.
they enjoy the process. And with any relationship, things come up, right? Like conflicts or things that you've got to work through. So what I would say differentiates between, like just regular stuff versus not so healthy things are if it's a repetitive thing. So, because again, it's a talk about boundaries and compatibility, right? It's like if there's an issue that keeps coming up over and over and it's not getting resolved, that's problematic, right? It's like,
Mm,
why is it not getting resolved? Is this just a fundamental incompatibility? We want different things or our values are not aligned? Or, is this person not respecting my boundaries or not got the willingness to work through certain things or to have the self-awareness to see actually I'm playing a part of this outcome.
yeah,
So if something goes on and on, because again, I think this is what leads to the divorces, right? It's like
yeah.
stuff that can't be overcome, that's unworkable, or that's become unworkable for whatever reason.
What and why would that be? Why would it become unworkable? Is it a fact that it's unworkable, or is it a fact that they've left it so long that it's become unworkable? Is it like small things then end up turning into the big things because there's no communication there?
Yes to all. So sometimes it's life, right? Like
Yeah,
we're always growing and evolving. So if people are going in different directions and they can't realign
Yeah.
on, direction and values, then that's one thing. Sometimes it's that they don't have the willingness, right? They're just like, no, they've got that belief, right? No relationships should be easy, so I'm not prepared to work on it. Or other
Mm.
stuff, because again, like if it's a long-term thing, maybe kids have come into the situation,
Yeah.
it changes dynamics.
Is the willingness thing, is that, does that come from like unrealistic expectations that like relationships are supposed to be easy?
Well, we've all got our beliefs and assumptions, right? So
Yeah.
it's like, what are those beliefs and assumptions creating in our
Mm.
world and in our relationships?
Makes sense.
Because again, go
Yeah,
on.
go, no, go ahead.
I was just going to say, there's like assuming positive intent as well. So if it, say for example, you've been married and then someone does something, if we get defensive about that, we can blow it out of proportion. If we go, okay, this person loves me and has up until this point treated me well, let me go in with the assumption that they didn't mean to offend me or upset me or piss me off or whatever, and kind of come at it from a different angle and say like, hey, what was going on for you when this happened? And they
Mm,
can then share, and you can go, okay, well, this is how I received that or how I experienced it. And then if that person's like, oh shit, I didn't realize, I'm sorry, I won't do that again, that kind of squares it off. But if they're like, oh, okay, well, whatever, and it doesn't get resolved, it causes those resentments, right, that are going to fester over time.
do you think a lot of people in relationships who are having them arguments, or let's say like they've broken trust, whether like it's a lie or a financial secret or cheating or whatever it is, they need that probably third party to help them work through that?
Possibly, yeah, for some things. Because I
Yeah,
mean, if both people have done work and have got self-awareness and willingness, sometimes they can get through that together.
yeah,
But sometimes there might need to be, because again, we've all got defensive parts, right? So
yeah,
it's very easy for that to get triggered and for then the communication to shut down, which then stops the resolution.
yeah. How can couples rebuild trust after like a rupture like that? Let's say there is cheating because maybe one partner felt neglected or whatever the case may be.
Mm. So Esther Perel talks a lot about that kind of repair in her work. Um, so I mean, it takes a lot to rebuild trust, right? Like it's not going to happen overnight. So you've got to work on that, both parties, right? The party that say cheated has got to own that like this is not going to be an overnight fix, right? And actually I need to rebuild and almost like, start from scratch in that side of things. And also give that other person grace. Because if they, and again, this other person needs to know I can't keep throwing that back in their face forever. Otherwise it's irrelevant, right?
Yes, that makes sense because, like, you're never gonna repair something if you just constantly keep bringing up. It's kind of like I'm keeping score of the things that you did, and you're keeping score of the things that I did, and it's like
Mhm.
you're never really going to
It's
have a
forgiveness.
have a happy relationship if that's the case.
Right. And it's like, can you forgive? Like,
Yeah,
I think I would have a real hard time
yeah,
forgiving and overcoming that and trusting they're not going to do it again, right?
yeah,
So, and if you know that about yourself, then it's like, I mean, maybe some people will go, oh, let's try, and then
yeah,
come to that conclusion that actually I can't overcome this, right?
yeah.
Or maybe some people can. I know people that do.
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I'd say that's happens a lot where it happens and people try to overcome that and then realize, oh, I can't get over that, and it
Like
keeps
papering
building.
over the cracks a little bit. It's like, yeah, I can overcome this and let's carry on. But if you've not really
Mm,
dealt with like your own grief and, betrayal over that,
yeah,
plus what caused that in the first place, right? Was it something that was incompatible or shaky in the relationship or the dynamic? Or has this person got avoidance or this person is, self-sabotaging, in which case it's not necessarily this person's, they've not played a part in it necessarily. Do you know
mm.
what I mean?
Isn't it funny like that? Relationships are such a kind of complicated dynamic, and yet like most people go into relationships or go into marriages never kind of working with a therapist or working with a counselor or working with someone who can kind of like, because most people are just terrible at communicating. I know I'm terrible at communicating in a relationship as well, and it's like you're not giving yourself the best possible chance to make that relationship successful without kind of diving into that professional help even for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. And I think a lot of people tolerate
Yeah,
stuff, right? So like you're in a relationship and it looks all right on the outside, but deep down, what are you tolerating, right? Or where does that relationship take you out of alignment, or where are you out of alignment with yourself in order to keep tolerating certain situations? Or,
Mm,
life's not a fairy tale, right? So there's going to be issues, there's going to be things to overcome. Like, that's part of the beauty of relationships, right? They can be a great place to grow and evolve,
yeah.
but that's my whole jam is like alignment, right? And I just see a lot of people that you just think, why are you even together, right?
But do you ever think that when you're with a client, it's like you shouldn't even be together, but you're not going to say that, and you're because their goal is to obviously resolve it. So
Well, I've been on that. I've been that person as well, where like
okay,
anyone else around me would be screaming like, "What the hell are you doing? Wake up!" But you have to come to your own conclusions. Otherwise, we'd all just read a book, close it, and be like, "My life's fixed. I'm fine."
yeah, yeah.
So
You have to make them decisions yourself at the end of the day, don't you?
yeah,
Yeah, and it's so difficult to do because when you're the one in the relationship, like the emotions are highest, so therefore you're probably the most blind to, the reality of the situation.
totally right. Like I always make this like analogy of like buying a house. So say like you wouldn't get absolutely high as a kite or drunk and go and buy a house, right? But
Mm,
often we're like high on, the chemistry, and we're, making commitments and purchases with our, time, energy, our heart that's not necessarily, of
yeah,
sound mind.
yeah. It's literally the most important decision you'll probably make is the partner you choose to spend the rest of your life with.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's also the reason why you probably can't trust yourself at the start of a relationship, like you said, because you have all these chemical imbalances going on that make you probably the worst judge of what's going on.
Right. Well, but that's the difference, right? It's like you've got to have that strong enough connection to yourself and to know
Mm,
your own blind spots and potential, downfalls
yeah,
to navigate that, even though that's all going off, because you can't necessarily turn it off. I mean, you can turn off certain situations altogether because you're like, oh, I've been there before and I can see that's a walking red flag, or I can see that we're not compatible, even though
yeah.
there's amazing chemistry. So I know myself enough to know I'm going to say no to that.
Mm,
But otherwise, it's like, okay, keeping your life going as well, right? Like keeping your own friendships going, keeping your own, health and fitness and whatever practices going so that you stay as connected to yourself as possible
mm.
as you
So,
navigate that.
and with that as well, it's like, okay, I understand that you're gonna have to work on yourself, but does it become a case where people try to work on themselves too much before they allow themselves the chance to get in a relationship? Because like even if you think about people, like I know a friend who's been with his he's in his 30s now, and he's been with his partner since he was like 15 or something. Like he's gone through like in terms of knowing myself to be in a relationship, like he's probably gone through multiple versions of the person that he is in that relationship, and she's
Yeah.
probably done the same as well. And then I think of other people who are like, oh yeah, I still need to know myself a little bit better before I get in a relationship. So then I'm thinking like, why are them two things completely
Yeah.
in contrast?
And that's beautiful, right? To because we're all going to, well, most of us are going to grow and evolve and change, right? So being able to do that with someone is beautiful, and probably not as common and as we would like it to be. I think as well, sometimes there's nothing wrong with staying single and just being with yourself, working on yourself, and that's great. Sometimes it can become an avoidance, right? So in certain situations, it's like, no, I just need to be a bit more this, or I need to do a bit more that, or whatever. And in a way, it's like more of an acceptable version of avoiding because it's like, no, I don't want to get hurt
Mm,
again, which is something to work on, right? Is like, a fear, and it's
yeah,
founded because, we've all been through the ringer at this point. So, like, that's understandable. But it's just, again, like having that discernment of like, okay, let me question this and just make sure that it is, a solid, you know, aligned reason why I'm not pursuing anything right now versus an avoidance or a fear or something that I'm,
yeah.
trying to.
Versus, oh, I'll get in the relationship when I make more money, or I'll get in the relationship when I have this career, or I'll get in the relationship when I'm in better shape, or
Because then it's like, is there and again, fair enough, that's a choice, that's fine, nothing wrong with that. But is it something underlying that of like, because I'm not worthy right now? That's a different energy and intention, right? Versus, no, I'm just working on myself and I'm happy and, I want to level up first versus I don't feel worthy as I am.
Okay, two more questions and then I'll let you go. What's the most useful truth about relationships that's hard to accept, but once you accept it, everything gets easier?
Let me just whip out some profound statement. What's the most uncomfortable
What's
truth?
the most useful truth? So what's a useful truth about relationships that it's hard to accept, but once you accept it, it makes everything easier in that relationship.
Um, Compatibility over chemistry. So, so
What does
you
that mean?
so you're going to struggle if there's amazing chemistry, but you're not compatible on certain things like values, non-negotiables like you want kids, they don't, you want marriage, they don't.
Yeah.
You want to live close by and they want long distance. Like those kind of things, non-negotiable. And sometimes we can override certain things because, well, I've never had this connection before, right? This person makes me feel the way I've no one ever in the world's ever made me feel. So it can be hard to walk away from that. But if you truly want, like long, because if you're just happy to just meander through life and have experiences, there's no problem with that. But if you know, like, no, I want family, I want marriage, I want commitment, security, then compatibility needs to be the building block, the foundation. You can still have chemistry with people,
Yeah.
that you're compatible with, but that has to kind of be the number one to focus on.
Yeah, so more about can I have long term conversations with this person for the rest of my life that are useful versus this person looks good naked.
And can I grow and evolve with this person? And
Mm.
if I'm ill or if something bad happens to me, is this person going to be supportive? Are they going to, I saw a meme once and it was like, do you want this person next to you on your worst day? Right? That's going to weed out a whole bunch of people straight away.
Yeah, that's a very good one to filter out. Is, is there any other good ones to filter out whether this person's going to be compatible to me or not?
Another one I like to use with clients is, would you feel comfortable leaving your 7-year-old self there? Or if you can't think like that, thinking like you've got, like a niece or a nephew or, a godchild, would you feel
Mm,
comfortable? And would that child feel comfortable? Would your 7-year-old self feel comfortable with that person? Because again, that's going to highlight, actually, no, this is just pure chemistry and vibes versus this is a solid person that's, self-aware, they're responsible, they're dependable, right? And they feel emotionally safe.
and that's what it all comes down to, doesn't it? Safety at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, emotional safety.
Yeah. And then the last question I have for you. So, what's the most useful truth about dating that's hard to accept, but once you accept it, everything gets easier?
Um, I would say that your relationships are a mirror, right? They're mirroring something. And it's not necessarily the conscious stuff on the surface. It's like what's, the childhood trauma that you've not unpacked or the belief or assumption, about relationships or what you deserve or whatever. It's gonna
Yes.
get
So,
mirrored back to
so
you in some way.
if all my dating flings or anything like that are all chaos, it's probably that I'm probably a little bit chaos.
Maybe a little bit of chaos in underneath there, underneath the surface.
Right, I'll have to go back and have a think about that. Laura, where can people go if they want to keep up to date with the work that you do and your fantastic meme threads?
My fantastic memes can be found on Instagram, so at quit dating idiots, little underscore underneath each one. I'm writing a book, so my book's coming out in October next year, so that's exciting.
Unreal. Well, then I have to have you back on to talk about the book when you have it published. Unreal.
Yeah.
Congratulations. And then, what if people wanted to inquire about working with you, or maybe even do like a consultation or anything like that?
Yeah, perfect. So again, either go to my website, which is quitdatingidiots.com, or go on my, link in bio on my Instagram, or just shoot me a DM and we can chat, about your situation and what's going on.
Okay, brilliant. That was the Uneducated PT podcast with the brilliant Laura. I hope you've enjoyed this conversation and make sure you follow along on Spotify, subscribe on YouTube, share it with your friends on social media, and we'll see you on the next one. Thank you very much, Laura.